the way I see it is if I can't have an open conversation with you about sex and sexual safety, then I'm not interested in having sex with you.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from across the entire spectrum of non-monogamy to hear their fascinating stories. We always strive to bring guests on the show who have a healthy and positive approach to non-monogamy.
However, everyone approaches this a little differently, and at its core, our show is about hearing and learning from different experiences and approaches people have. With that in mind, it's important to remember that the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily represent those of our own.
It's also important to remember that we aren't doctors or therapists and that we produce this show for entertainment purposes only. Please consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on this show.
We should also let you know that this podcast will hopefully include some explicit language. So, if that kind of thing offends you, you should probably keep listening until it no longer does. If you're under 18, we'd suggest finding a different show or gather up your parents and listen as a family. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 26.
I'm Finn.
And I'm Emma. Yay, we remembered.
We always remember.
Today we interview Vaughn, and he is someone who's exploring polyamory and swinging, and we discuss a lot of different aspects of him exploring both of those worlds as a solo male with partners and also as someone of color. So it's a really interesting interview, and we hope you all enjoy. Before we jump into the interview, we do have a couple of quick announcements.
Well, the first one was we wanted to say thanks to Vaughn for a few things. For one, putting up with some really bad internet connection when we interviewed him. Not sure if it was on his side or our side. We'll take the blame for this one, but we actually edited out most of the issues, so the listeners shouldn't hear any of it, but it kind of threw him off his game a little bit. So we wanted to say thank you to him for that, and also thank him for waiting a little while for us to publish this episode. We were waiting for the right time to get it out there and waiting. We had a bit of a backlog, so
moving through it.
We're moving through it, so you'll hear us mention some things about like the World Cup and that. So this was recorded a few months back. So again, thank you to him for his patience and for coming on the show.
Yeah.
So those things that you mentioned, the other quick things to mention.
Uh-huh.
The first, we just wanted to mention the two resources that we mention on every episode. And we just wanted to quickly remind people, these are resources that we personally use and that we love using, so we're not just repping things that we have no idea what they are or how they work. So
right.
We just wanted to get that out there and say, yeah, we do get some small kickbacks for recommending these things, but we wouldn't be recommending them if we didn't love them. So
exactly, yeah.
The first one is a website called stdcheck.com, and you can get there from the links on our website or the links in the show notes or the links in your podcast player. Anywhere, but
any of the links.
Yeah, so if you use those links, you get $10 off a full STD screening. And basically what this website allows you to do is, rather than having to make an appointment at your doctor, go get your blood work, and then wait a couple of weeks to get the results, you can go online, make a profile on their website, schedule a walk. You don't even have to schedule an appointment. You can just go walk into like LabCorp or Quest, get your blood drawn, give them some wee-wee, and...
Wee-wee? Are you serious right now?
and then, like a day later, you get your results. And it's cheaper, it's faster, it's easier. So we've been doing it for the last few years. We love it, and we just wanted to get more people getting tested, and we get a $10 discount for all our listeners. So
check it out.
That's the first one.
Yeah.
What's the second one?
The second one is the website Cassidy, and this is a dating website to find other people who are exploring non-monogamy. We've been using Cassidy for a few years now and love it. So
it's basically the best non-monogamy website for finding other people.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want to check it out, you can use the link on our website for a free 30-day trial. You can also leave us a review on any iTunes or podcast platform, and you get a free 90-day trial. So that's super exciting.
So do that and meet all the sexy people. Plus, there's some hot pictures of us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. I think that's enough.
Real quick, you can find us at our website at normalizingnonmonogamy.com. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram under the screen name NNM Podcast.
Okay.
Not Instagram. Oh my gosh. Twitter and Cassidy under that screen name.
Yeah, we don't do the Instagram.
No.
So anyway, now we're done for real.
Sorry.
And let's go to the interview. Yeah, so thanks for taking some time out of your Sunday to chat with us. And we'll give you a few minutes to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you, and we'll dive in deeper from there.
Yeah.
Well, Emma, Finn, thanks so much for having me on. My name's Vaughn. I'm a cis, hetero, 30-something-year-old male in the South. Like you said, I reached out to the website because I really enjoy the podcast. I listen every week, and just thought it might be interesting to have a different perspective on. I actually didn't expect you to invite me on the show. So that was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah. Fair warning to anybody who reaches out to us.
Yeah, you'll probably be invited on. We're just trying to get as many different perspectives as possible. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, you said you found us through Monogamy Disrupted, so wanted to throw a shout out to those guys for sending some listeners our way. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Love Malik and Nadia. Enjoy that show and listen every week as well.
Yeah, no, they're fantastic. So they'll be happy to hear that their audience is spreading around. So,
yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So any other little pieces of information you'd want to share about yourself before we start kind of digging into how you got into swinging and everything?
Well, I don't know. I'm just a pretty regular guy. I'm professional. I like to hang out with friends and socialize, and I'm really, really into music, particularly my vinyl collection now.
Very cool. Very cool. Well,
yeah, that's awesome.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, can you take us a little bit through your journey? So how do you identify, and where did you start, I guess?
Well, I guess I, at this point, most closely identify with solo polyamory, with a dash of swing, I guess you'd say.
I like that term, dash of swing.
So my journey here has been a little bit different from some of your previous guests, I suppose. Similar to some, I grew up in a pretty conservative environment regarding relationships and other things. All I knew was that there was one way to date, and that was with the intent to marry, and you don't have sex before then.
Right.
And I lived that for several years, to say the least. So it wasn't until late in college that I even crossed the bridge of any sort of sexual relationships in general. And after that, I think my sort of transition into the world of non-monogamy started more in my late 20s. Up to that point, I had been sort of in a serial monogamy sort of structure, with a couple of relationships that lasted a few years, and then some brief sort of flurs of fun in between, I guess I'd say. But I was always very sort of strict to the idea of you don't date more than one person at a time, and sort of in my mid to late 20s, I was in a relationship that was on again, off again. We saw other people in between, and then we got back together at a point and started having some real conversations about what we were looking for and what it meant to, have emotional and physical attachments to other people in the interim, and what that meant for us.
Yeah.
Sparked some really interesting conversations, and eventually, without going too far into it, I guess, we eventually ended up, discussing our experiences in pretty significant detail, and then that rolled into kind of role play scenarios, which was kind of fun and exciting. Yeah, and then we just decided we were going to try to look into the world of swinging, in part because at the time, just searching the internet and various podcasts, I came across Life on the Swing Set and started learning about the lifestyle primarily through that. And we sort of experimented with it, went to a couple clubs, never really did anything with any other couples, but just enjoyed the sexy environment.
Right.
Now, that relationship ended up coming to an end, and then went through a period of a couple years where I was single, and really started diving into my own personal exploration into how I felt about my dating life and relationship structure. Read a number of books, listened to a number of podcasts. I'm a big Savage listener as well. I know you guys are.
Yeah.
And have been since college, actually. I think at that point, I didn't really have a clear vision for it, but I decided I was just going to be as the complete open book with all of my partners and let them know I'm seeing other people. I am open to emotional interactions with them or attachments to them, and also, physical attachments to them.
So after you broke up with the partner that you started exploring swinging, you started dating other people and then dating multiple people at once?
Yeah, I did. And which was pretty much a first for me. I was at the time reading through The Ethical Slut and starting embracing some of those principles. And I figured, the only way for me to really figure this out is to really give it a shot and kind of commit to it. It felt natural to me and right to me despite my previous socialization.
Yeah.
And I got to say, what really made it real to me was the sense of relief that I had with being able to be very open about my feelings and my desires with the people that I was seeing. Whereas before, if I started developing a crush on someone else, to me that meant, oh, you're not really in love with this person, got to get out, relationship's not real. So it ended up being a really interesting and the journey that I learned a lot about myself.
So was that part of what spurred you back when you were with the partner you guys started exploring swinging? Was it, starting to fantasize about other people or think about other people, or was it more fantasies between the two of you that were, unable to be fulfilled by the two of you?
Well, it actually started more with just discussing what it meant to have seen other people in the times that we were broken up or on breaks, and just being honest with each other that, hey, I started seeing another woman and I feel such and such a way about her. So us getting back together, I can't pretend I don't still have a connection to that person. So we just wanted to be honest with each other.
Was this all with that same partner? Sorry, just trying to make sure I understood the time. So you were breaking up and getting back together with the partner that you started swinging with, and that was when you started to understand, like, you had feelings for other people, you had other relationships, and then you guys kind of took it from there?
We kind of took it from there, yeah. And started exploring swinging after those conversations, after becoming comfortable with those ideas.
Okay.
Then started looking into swinging. Although we never actually got to the point of swapping or doing anything like that with other couples before that relationship ended at that time.
Okay, so it was sort of led into by breaking up, getting back together, starting to talk about what that meant, and then going to the club and just enjoying the atmosphere and everything. But it kind of more opened your eyes to what was out there and different relationships.
Right. And that's the time when you guys found Life on the Swing Set and other resources and started exploring everything out there.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, perfect. Just making sure we understood how it all happened. So
right, it's not exactly the most straightforward path.
I don't think any of us have super straightforward paths.
No,
that's very true.
Yeah. So then, after the woman that you were in a relationship with, that you guys broke up, you said you started really diving into it more on your own and how you thought and felt about relationship styles for yourself.
Yeah, that's correct. And I'm someone who, just by nature of my profession and education, I just like to read as much as I can and learn about things before I really invest in them. So I just started picking up books and podcasts and learning more and more, and then developed a little bit more of the language and the understanding of the fact that polyamory existed and swinging really existed outside of, things you may hear about on TV that didn't seem real to me at the time. And, that led to me just being more open with everyone that I was seeing, and then eventually saying, okay, I'm going to start practicing polyamory in a dedicated way. And that was probably about a bit over a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And so you had pretty much moved away from the swinging completely at that point, and you would say it's more looking for multiple relationships, or just more so maybe whatever comes your way. If it's one relationship, that's fine. If you find somebody else, then that's fine too. You're not necessarily looking to have 3 or 4 or 7 partners, right?
And I'll say, honestly, like I said, these things sort of ran in parallel for me, because my I was still interested in the idea of swinging. I just didn't have a great sense of where exactly I fell on the spectrum of non-monogamy. So I was kind of just trying things as they came.
Sure. So how did that look for you, and I guess how did it work in a real sense?
Well, I'll say my first actual experience with being ethically non-monogamous started with a swing experience where I met a couple that were experienced swingers on a beach that I like to visit from time to time. Just made friends, chatted it up with them, and then they let me know what their relationship style and structure was, and then later on, after hours of hanging out, invited me to play with them, which was a lot of fun and really formative for me because I could see that, these two really love each other. They're been married for 20 years, and my presence as a guest star doesn't change that. All it does is add to it.
Right.
And I got to see that interaction between them, and I really admired it. So I'd say at the time I was still very much interested in whether swing would or would not work for me. But I think the reality for me, coming back from that vacation, was that I didn't even know where to begin when it came to swinging. So I just was looking for, open-minded individuals to interact with, and it became more of I'm dating individuals openly after that, in a polyamorous way.
Right. Okay. And so have you continued to also explore like being the third with other couples or finding single women to do the swinging with, or have you've transitioned mostly to just the dating and relationship side of it?
Well, a little bit of both. I'd say primarily the dating and relationship side of things. The more polyamorous side of things is where I exist most of the time. But I love being like I said, a guest star.
It's that touch or dash of swing.
Yeah. That's still very exciting, and I enjoy connecting with people in that way and witnessing their connection. So there are a couple here and there that I still occasionally will play with on that front. I've had partners that I've been dating in a significant emotional way that I have dabbled in swing with, where we explore that together to see if that would work for us. But I also have had partners that are not interested in swing at all, and that's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool that it's just kind of whatever happens is totally cool with you, and you take it as it comes. Have you found it difficult as a single male to find partners who are interested in, I guess, poly or swing with somebody who is a single male, or have you found that to be not as difficult?
Well, it's interesting because I think the reactions I get are polarized. Either if I meet a woman and let them know how I date, either their response is like, "That's crazy. Who are you?" and they run, or they say, "Oh, I'm actually been thinking about these things too, and I'm open to exploring." And then we just have conversation and see where things fit. And important to me to take every relationship as it sort of comes and let it grow the way that it's going to grow. So I don't say, "Oh, well, if you're dating me, you have to do this, or we have to date that particular way." It's just a matter of whether we match each other in terms of what we're looking for at that time. When it comes to swinging in couples, I find it's probably more challenging in that realm to be a single male. The bar for entry with a couple as a single guy is very high, and I understand the many reasons for that. But that can be a little bit challenging because you really have to extend yourself to prove that you're not a creeper, you're not going to try to disrupt their relationship, that that you're safe. Which, as someone who is kind of all those things naturally, it can be frustrating at times. But I get it. Not all of us single guys are on the level.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine it's really frustrating when you're like, I'm not one of those guys. I am respectful. I'm all these things, and you're just you have to find a way to convince people in a very short amount of time, which is usually one email is what you've got to do it.
Yeah.
I guess, do you have any tips for the single guys out there that, what you've seen maybe success-wise? And
well, I'd say the key is to just be sincere. I think in general, people can see through bullshit. So just be you. If you're a guy who's just wants to have, no strings attached sex, don't want to know anything about, the people you're with necessarily, except that they're hot, just say that. And then you can start from that basis. If you're more like me, I tend to want to get to know the couple and get to know their relationship a little bit, and really have a genuine interaction with them that even if we don't play, could just end up being, friendship, then convey that, whether it be on your profile or in your, email to them.
Right.
And that seems to work for me.
Yeah, I think that's a good point about the email. When you first reach out to a couple, I know from the couple standpoint in our experience, if a single male takes the time to write a well-crafted email and seems very respectful, that goes a lot longer, for us than it is, and it helps a lot. Yeah. Over a one-liner email.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what's interesting is I've been on both sides of this. So I've been part of a couple who's open to single males, and noticed that that same high entry bar on my end, where you tend to just cast certain amount of skepticism strongly about. I always, when with a partner, respond, interacting with single males, I always reply, I never blow them off. And even if it's not a good message or not what we're interested in, I say, hey, thanks for sending the message, but we're not interested. Right. On the other end, I know how it feels to just, be ignored.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's fair advice, and maybe a good tip for people is, even if, within reason, I guess there's some that are just so blatantly disrespectful. Oh, yeah. You're like, you don't even, but if they, I think,
it's just being courteous. That's what it comes to. Courteous and kind. I don't know, treat people how you would want to be treated. Like you said, you've seen it on both sides, so you know exactly what it's like on both ends. So,
right. Oh, I was curious if you have you tried to go to an actual in-person venue to meet people where maybe it's a little easier to
as a single male?
Yeah, as a single male, to convey your genuine interest in meeting and being friends with people.
Yeah, I have. I've been to a couple of clubs solo just to check them out and see how I felt about going as a single guy. And I'll be honest, those situations I don't think are the best fit for me, because what I've found is that either it seems like the times that interest has been shown to me has been very just hey, you look hot, come have sex with me now, and sort of wordless transactions, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not necessarily what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And if you're the single guy trying to spark conversations, sometimes people are a little hesitant to really engage you on that front. That's just what my experience has been, but I'm sure it's not everyone's.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, how do you go about meeting people? I know outside of going in person, like you said, are there certain websites or apps that you find most useful? I know both on the poly and the swinging side of things.
Well, I'd say on the swinging side, the app that's been the best for me is SDC. That's I've had some success there and met some really great people there.
Yeah, and it's probably the most popular in your area too. I think those.
There are a lot of regional
websites.
Yeah, certainly seems like it. So I've met people there both as a couple and as a single. Interestingly, as a single, probably the best connect that I've had has been sort of a referral from a friend who said, hey, you guys might like this single guy. And that's worked out, really well for me. So I've enjoyed SDC. As far as dating more poly, honestly, Tinder has worked. It seems like, the folks there tend to be a little bit more open-minded. And then there's an app called Field, which is, for couples. And I've met folks who are interested in swinging there and folks who are interested in poly there as well.
Cool.
Yeah, and have you ever, just because I'm totally curious. Have you ever met like a person out like a bar or just anywhere in, I guess, vanilla land and started talking to them and spurred a relationship and then been like, well, but I'm more into poly, and they were just like, oh, that's totally cool. Let's explore that. Or have you had more, like a higher success rate meeting people on apps that are kind of expecting it?
Well, I've definitely met folks in vanilla land, I guess you could say. One interesting one was I met a woman out at a bar who happened to be there celebrating, her partner's birthday, and ended up making friends with her and sort of having a good time just hanging out with, that party. And, we connected, and I had no idea that their relationship was open. And I don't think she had any idea where I was coming from. So it wasn't until later in the evening when we were sort of, exchanging information, saying, hey, we should be friends. You kind of, there'd been a flirtatious vibe over the course of the evening. And over the next day or so, we kind of back and forth. Relationships open. Well, that's great because I'm poly. And that worked out well. And some of the relationships I've had have been with people that I've met through friends or known through friends, and then we start seeing each other. And at this point I'm very open with it. I don't like to engage meaningfully with anyone without them knowing, because I don't want anyone to be surprised or shocked or feel like I was getting over on them.
Sure.
It like I said, it may just come from a standpoint of just being genuine in my interactions with people, that for the most part it seems like at this point I kind of tend to draw people towards me that are a little more open-minded.
Yeah, I guess if you can go to the beach and they just come swarming to you.
In fairness, it was a clothing optional beach, so
that was going to be my guess. Just because that tends to draw a little bit more open-minded people.
So, are you open to your friends and family about the way your relationship styles, or have you been pretty? It sounds like you've been pretty genuine about it with most people. And are you with your family and friends as well?
This is kind of a challenging issue or area for me, in that I'm figuring that out. I am increasingly open to most of my friends. There's a fair amount of overlap between my professional life and my personal friendship life, so I have to pick and choose who I disclose these things to. Mm-hmm. And there are very few people that work with me that also know this. Most of my friends who are purely outside of work know. And I have one family member, a sibling, that knows that we're pretty close. But the rest of my family does not know yet. And I'm trying to figure out how to approach that, to be honest with you. Because like I said, they're pretty conservative when it comes to dating and relationships.
Right. Yeah, take them to the beach. family beach day.
Surprise!
So
fantastic surprise. No way that could go wrong.
Yeah, right.
I think it's unfortunate. I don't know. I want to encourage people to be out, but I know we aren't completely out either. So it's an interesting thing to think about and how to handle it, and everyone approaches it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
But one thing I've noticed is that I think many people who are non-monogamous just tend to be, at least people who I've met, just tend to be just open-minded and very free in the way that they interact with other people in general. So an interesting response that I've had from some of my friends who I've disclosed to is that, oh, that makes perfect sense for you, considering the way that you are with all of your friends. Because, I don't know, I'm just social and I share a lot of myself with my friends and make connections that are meaningful and deep, but do so with a lot of people fairly easily. So
yeah,
I totally agree that the more you can be open, the better. I think it helps your friends who haven't thought about things a certain way, say, hey, there's other alternatives out there, and just makes the community better overall.
Yeah, I agree. And everyone does it in their own way, however that works.
Yeah. Is there a pretty good support network in your area for the poly and swinging communities, or has it been a struggle, like kind of feeling on your own, trying to navigate it in the dark?
Yeah, it's a little tough. I mean, I felt like I was all by myself for quite some time. And there are some networks of, well, particularly polyamorous folks. There's some meetup group kind of things, which are few and kind of far between. I mean, I am in the South, so people aren't too open about these things. I'm increasingly finding that there's a pretty robust swing community that I'm starting to make some friends in and really get kind of tapped into, which has been great. So, I'm sort of learning that.
Yeah.
Right.
I think if you look hard enough in pretty much any location, at least around the U.S., you should find some sort of group, but I don't know.
Totally agree. I mean, when I first got on SEC, I was at the recommendation of the couple that I met and had that first experience with. I was just shocked at how many swingers there were in my area.
Yeah.
Right. Have you seen I guess, how do you see in your area or in your relationships the conversation around safer sex and testing and status? Is that, has it become pretty normal conversation for you to have with people, or is it still a little bit tough and taboo for you guys to bring that up?
Oh man, I got to say it's been very much normalized, and I found that those conversations are so much easier now that I am openly non-monogamous than before. In my sort of vanilla dating life, it was always, it was taboo to sort of talk about sexual histories, and you sort of say, oh well, yeah, I'm safe and you're safe, but oftentimes it was kind of vague.
Right.
Whereas
Yeah.
now, by the nature of the way we date, it's a conversation that I comfortably have early, and I revisit those conversations routinely with partners, and honestly it's comforting and easy. The way I see it is, if I can't have an open conversation with you about sex and sexual safety, then I'm not interested in having sex with you. So very early on, I say, I get tested twice a year. I share my results. And have no problem with that, and sort of expect something similar. I mean, everyone is different, but the importance is to, feel comfortable that person is disclosing openly with you. So I routinely am sending screenshots of my, results to partners, and they do the same.
Have you seen, like, when you've met like a single woman, and not necessarily in the poly or the swinging community, have you seen them almost be taken aback when you're very blunt and open about that conversation, because it's not as common in the single dating world? And this is purely a question because neither of us have really spent much time in that world to know.
Yeah,
but I could see if you're very open, and like if that's one of the first things you're bringing up, I could see where somebody would be like, they'd be taken aback by it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a little startling. I mean, I had a fairly recent interaction on a dating app where someone was we were going back and forth and flirting heavily, and we're interested in seeing each other, and there's definitely a sexual tilt to it. And I did what I usually do. Hey, before we meet, I just want you to know I date non-monogamously. This is how it what my structure is, and the frequency which I get tested, I'm happy to bring results with me for you to see. And it was kind of funny how the conversation kind of dried up a little bit. She was like, oh, thanks for saying that, but was clearly very taken aback by it.
Right.
And there wasn't what I've actually come to expect from my non-monogamous partners, who say, oh, that's great, fantastic. Here's my routine. Yeah. This is what I do, and this is what I expect. There was none of that. So that does happen.
Yeah, but I guess that's a good part of the vetting process, because if she's unable to reply with that, then it maybe makes you think, hey, maybe she doesn't get tested that often. It's obviously not her. It's not of importance to her.
Right.
And now you get to make that decision. Do you want to progress and move forward with her? And
also she gets to learn.
Yeah, she gets to learn.
That, I mean, at least a different style out there. Maybe she'd never been exposed to someone in that, that had been non-monogamous before.
Yeah.
And then she's like, oh, shit, I need to go get tested. I need to up my game a little.
Right. I had a partner recently tell me about incident with a new partner of hers where that conversation happened, and that gentleman's response was, I need to get tested. And he was very much on the level about it. So things worked out.
Cool. Yeah, that's good to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I was curious, do you ever see or interact with couples who, like, it's maybe part of the fantasy to have you not use protection?
That I have not experienced, fortunately. It wouldn't be something I would be interested in.
Right.
And I gotta say, the only times I've, just looking back across my dating history, the only times I've really been pressured to not use protection at all has been in my vanilla dating life in the past. So.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. Was it just like the girl didn't want to use it? That seems surprising to me. Like, usually it's the guy who's like, well, I don't want to put on a condom. It's a pain in the ass, blah, blah, blah. But
yeah. I mean, maybe I'm a little atypical, but in my entire life I've been pretty paranoid and strict about protection. So maybe I'm a little atypical. I've sort of heard that before from women I've dated, but occasionally, someone you get comfortable with will say, "Hey, we don't have to. I'm on the pill." And I say, "Actually, I prefer to continue to use them." So
yeah, nothing wrong with that.
No, not at all.
I was also curious. You talked early on about how you were kind of raised in a heavily conservative and religious background, and then you slowly started into the dating world. And I guess, do you mind talking a little bit about what that transition, like how you finally started to realize that it was okay to have sex outside of marriage, and that progression for you? Because I think that's a tough one for people to overcome when they're brought up in such a fundamentalist way.
Yeah.
Well, first I'd ask, how long do we have? Because I could talk all day about it.
Well, let's see.
Yeah. I guess in brief, I grew up with a promise ring. Took that all the way with me to college, and it wasn't until a couple years in that I even tried to cross the bridge and lost my virginity, and then was freaked out by it and didn't try again for another couple of years.
This is in college, you said?
This is in college. So it wasn't really until getting into some relationships in my senior year that I actually, I would say, became truly sexually active. For a long time, I'd say I carried some guilt with in any relationship I was in which I was having sex, whether it was a serious relationship or a shorter term one. I definitely had issues with guilt related to that.
And mostly just because of the way you were brought up?
Absolutely. I often found myself in the position of being the less experienced, more sexually shy part of the relationship. So in a way, I had the good fortune of having a number of more experienced partners along the way. So I was able to learn.
Right.
But yeah, I'd say it wasn't until, probably somewhere in grad school and going to my mid to late 20s that I really started reinvestigating those feelings. And some of that came out of just my feelings about things that I just had a hard time agreeing with in terms of how the church treated, people in the queer community, and just some of the lifestyles that, I had friends and people that I cared about, and said, well, I don't agree with these things as much. Maybe I can sort of reinvestigate how I feel about my own feelings.
Right.
So it was admittedly a pretty long, drawn out process for me.
Yeah, I can imagine. I understand it was kind of a loaded question. I was just kind of curious. So I appreciate it. So I was curious if, let's say you met a partner and she was like, hey, I really love you, I don't want to do this, and do you ever see yourself backing out of it, or is this something that you think you'll take with you moving forward indefinitely?
I would say currently I would not be able to continue that relationship, and I've actually had to have that difficult conversation and sort of struggle before. I'm not completely closed off to the idea of either, particularly, temporarily being, monogamous with someone. But the issue that I have currently is that I have meaningful, connected relationships that would be very difficult for me to just walk away from and say, oh, I'm doing this because, another partner wants all of my attention.
Right, right. You wouldn't feel like it's fair to your other partners.
Right. Because we spent all this time together building, a relationship that means a lot to both of us. So, someone new that says they want only me and everyone else to be secondary, sort of flies in the face of the way I've structured my relationship. So that's just not compatible for me at this time.
Yeah. So I think the term we've heard people refer to it as hierarchical. Hierarchical.
Yeah.
I'm awful at the pronunciation of it, but
yeah, I'm not even going to try it because I don't want to mess it up.
Yeah, thanks for leaving me out on hang me out to dry on that one.
I'm not. Hierarchy's not really a thing in my dating life.
Okay.
At this point, and I like it that way. Really, what I found is it really makes it possible for each relationship I have to flourish in its own way and add to my life and my partner's life in the way that seems natural, with the exception being if, someone wants a primary relationship with me and everyone else to be secondary, then that obviously isn't going to work.
Right. So have you found like through experimentation or whatever, like the right number of partners that's easy for you to manage, but not too many, not too few, or you just sort of take it as it comes? And
I think the magic number, particularly when it comes to polyamorous relationships, for me, is probably 3. Any more than that, really, it's tough to find the time, with work and, really spending meaningful time with people. And, B, just to be able to really focus that much emotional energy and attention, that's any more than that is a bit much. So either 2 or 3 tends to work for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's completely reasonable. And I'm sure everybody's, magic number is a little different. I was just kind of curious what you had found.
That seems reasonable. I can only imagine the amount of emotional energy it takes to have more than 3 partners. 3 partners seems like it would be a good number.
It can be a lot. And, if you're really committed to the people you're seeing, if someone has an issue, like a family member's sick or a personal problem, and you have to give them more attention, you have to have, patient, metamors, I guess, it's a term, who will understand that. And, for me, if there's too many, then it's hard to really give people the time that they need.
Right. And you're not necessarily, I guess, from your perspective, building the relationships that you want to build because you won't have the time.
Now, the dash of swing is a little different in that, potentially I have more partners than that that are involved in swing, just because generally those connections tend to be less involved.
Right. So before we end the podcast here, we wanted to see, do you have any tips or tricks that you want to share with the listeners, or do you have anything else that we didn't talk about that you'd like to bring up?
I don't know how many tips and tricks I necessarily have, because I'm just figuring things out like we all are. But one thing I did think might be interesting to chat about is just the idea of being, a person of color in non-monogamous communities. That presents its own unique, experiences and challenges, because you kind of go out on an island in terms of your dating life, and then some can kind of find yourself on a totally separate island as well.
Yeah.
As a person of color, I have been fortunate to have develop friends and connections where it hasn't been as big of a deal. But I think particularly in sort of in swing communities, I get some interesting interactions along those lines. There's a certain amount of exoticism and fetishization kind of things that can be sort of fun to toy with, but can also be approached in ways that aren't as respectful.
Right.
I don't really know that I have a great answer for that, because preferences are preferences and fantasies are fantasies. But I think maybe just the key in general is just, communicate openly and ask people, how do you feel about this? There's probably a good way to approach those things that just involve open communication and asking, each individual what they're into and what works for them.
Yeah.
But, unfortunately, I've had some, incidents where, assumptions are made about the way that things that I'm interested in, the way that I want to play, and leaps are made just because of the color of my skin.
Yeah.
Which is
that's unfortunate. Like, just be respectful, people.
And like you said, people are going to have fantasies and even a fetish to some degree, but and correct me if I'm wrong, if somebody laid that out to you in a respectful way, would that be something you would be okay with? Or at that point, does it already cross the line of being uncomfortable for you?
Oh no, I think as long as it comes in a respectful way, I'd be open to those kind of things. It's just more when assumptions are made up front, and I've been invited to some interesting parties and things like that before knowing the first thing about me. So that makes it a little awkward. It's just like anything else, if someone just shoots you a message and says, "Hey, do you want to do this?" Or "Hey, you should come to that," without even asking who you are, it can make it a little awkward.
Right.
And then, I think in general, we can work on how we sort of arrange our communities to be mindful, that people come from different places. A plug I have to make is a book that I really love is Kevin Patterson's Love's Not Colorblind. It's more focused towards polyamorous communities. But it's a great book that, gives pretty personal, vignettes about how these interactions have gone for people, and it gives, advice on how to handle them as individuals and groups.
Yeah, we'll definitely link that in the show notes.
Yeah. I was curious, have you found within the dating community that it's your partners are skewed to be also people of color, or are you seeing a pretty wide variety of people that are interested in you and interested in having relationships?
I would say it's actually skewed away from it, interestingly, and some of that may just be that the person of color community within non-monogamy is maybe a smaller, sort of subgroup. So. That's actually been kind of interesting to me, and I don't know if that's just if that's more of a regional thing, because I know people do exist. I see them on Twitter and I see them on websites, and I just for whatever reason don't come across as many of them in my day to day. But me personally, I'm interested in people's across from all spectrums. So
right, yeah, that's very interesting, and that's Yeah, it's something that I don't think anybody who's not experienced it firsthand can really understand. It's a tough one.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that topic up. I think it's important to cover.
And also I wanted to say too that I think you did provide quite a few tips and tricks early on, so I wouldn't sell yourself too short.
Thank you.
So besides
my number one tip though is listening to the Normalizing Non-Monogamy podcast.
Oh well, thank you. Your paycheck will be coming in 3 to 5 business days.
When we're not having internet issues.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, besides the book by Kevin Patterson, are there any other resources that you found, and besides our podcast and Nadia and Malik's podcast, that you wanted to, suggest to the listeners that they might want to look up?
Well, The Ethical Slut was formative for me. That was a formative book for me in my explorations, and continued to be helpful. And I think they recently updated it as well. I listen to Dan Savage every week. I can't go wrong there.
Are you a Magnum subscriber?
I'm a Magnum subscriber.
Good.
Excellent.
That works. Life on the Swing Set has been fantastic as well for me, and I recommend that. And I'll say one book that was great for me as a single guy trying to sort of figure out, how to improve the ways that I interact with, women and their sexuality. Like I said, having come from a, socialization that doesn't really, isn't really tuned to that. I read a book called Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski. I think it's a great book that everyone should read. And I learned a lot reading that one. So
Great. Well, we'll definitely link those in the show notes. I think those are all wonderful recommendations. I know you mentioned Life on the Swing Set was formative for you because I think you said you and your partner found that back when you were first starting into swinging, right? Getting into swinging. Yeah. We found it too, right? They started their podcast right when we started into swinging too, which is it's really fun to kind of start your journey with a podcast and grow with them. I don't know. It's just it's cool, and they always have provided a lot of wonderful information.
Oh, cool.
I was going to throw one other tip out there that for the single guys, if you put the list of books that you've read in your profile, we would be much more likely to click on your profile and send you a message. So
that's a great idea. I should try that.
Just a quick index.
Books or podcasts.
Yeah, books and podcasts. Just a quick index of everything that you found useful. And we'll be like, well, this guy, he knows what he's doing.
That's a good tip.
So, all right. Well, again, we appreciate you taking the time to chat with us on Sunday and taking this World Cup, taking a break from the World Cup to chat with us and share some insight, and we appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, and we'll definitely keep in touch, and who knows, maybe we'll have you back on in a future episode with a partner or partners or whoever, so it'd be a lot of fun.
That'd be a cool idea.
So we look forward to it, and we will talk soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
We're back.
Yay! Back again.
And we don't have too much to say here. We just wanted to once again thank Vaughn for his time. And actually, in the last couple of days, he agreed to come back on the show and talk with us in the future about a couple other things. So stay tuned for that. That'll be coming up at some point in the future.
Yes, that's very exciting.
Beyond that, next week we have another interview, believe it or not. And we're talking with Christopher, who is one of the more unique interviews we've ever done. He's got some really interesting perspectives on a lot of things. His relationship dynamic is different than anything we've explored. So we're really excited to be bringing you that, and I know he's excited about it as well. So
definitely check it out.
We'll stop talking because the faster we stop, the faster we get to next week, I think.
Yes, but also don't forget to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from anybody. You can find us on our website at normalizingnonmonogamy.com. I think that's it.
That's it for real.
Okay, bye everyone.